Welcome, folks. May 22nd, 2022. Welcome back to This Week in Baseball Across Indiana, and we got a good one for you. I'm here with Captain Craw. Steve, how's things going? How's your week? And I know we're going to focus mainly on high school baseball this week, but you've got some college stories too. Fill us in on the college scene before we get moving too quick, and I get talking too much like I always do, and forget
Great,
about it.
great to see everyone out there. I can see everybody. I can see on your sofa, and I can see on your left seat. Ah, never mind that. Yeah, the regular season ended for D1 this past weekend, and it had already gotten started for some of the other levels. And here's what's going on: Ball State swept Miami of Ohio, and they won the first Mid American Conference regular season since 2014, which means that Ball State will host the MAC tournament. It'll be a four-teamer, starts Wednesday. The two seed is Central Michigan, Toledo's three, and Ohio is four. The ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference tournament, Notre Dame is in that. That begins Tuesday in Charlotte, North Carolina. They're doing pools, and the pool D is Notre Dame, the four seed, Virginia's five, and Florida State is nine. That's pool. That's the ACC tournament. The Big Ten tournament, Maryland won the Big Ten, so they're the number one seed. That tournament will be in Omaha, same stadium where the College World Series will be in a few weeks. Purdue is the seventh seed, and Indiana is the eighth seed. Indiana lost last night at Iowa. If they would have beaten Iowa, they would have jumped up to the sixth seed, but they're the eighth seed. The Missouri Valley Conference has three teams from Indiana. Number two seed Evansville, number five seed Indiana State, and number eight seed Valparaiso. That's an 8-team tournament, and it starts Tuesday, Springfield, Missouri. And the last team that's still playing in D1 is Purdue Fort Wayne. They're in the 6-team Horizon League. That starts a Wednesday in Dayton, Ohio at Wright State. They're the number one seed. And the Mastodons of Purdue Fort Wayne go in as the number 4 seed. Butler did not make the postseason, but they did win their last game yesterday. That's the last of Dave Schragg's 38
Yeah, I saw
year
that. That was a
coaching
big one.
career.
I'm
Yeah,
glad he got that last win.
Dave Schrag has been at 7 different schools, Evansville and Notre Dame, and then of course Butler among those. So that's a good deal. So all of those conferences we just mentioned, plus some others, will be a part of the. We'll get automatic bids, and then there'll be 33 at-large bids. So the NCAA tournament will be 64 teams, and the brackets for those will be announced on May 30th at noon. I believe May 30th is that Memorial Day?
Next Monday.
Yeah, that's Monday. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's when all that'll be announced. So I think it is all those teams that Notre Dame might get in as an at-large bid if they didn't win the ACC, if they win a few games. Evansville might, but it's probably pretty important for the other Indiana teams to come out of there as a champion. That way, there's no question that's an automatic bid situation there. And then as far as some of the other teams, Taylor hosted an opening round bracket last week, and in IU Southeast went all the way out to Santa Barbara, California, and they both went 1-2. So their seasons ended. Taylor went 41-18 this year, and IU Southeast, the Grenadiers, went 40-15. So very impressive. Earlham's season ended at the regional, the NCAA Division III regional in Lynchburg, Virginia. The Quakers won the Heartland Collegiate Conference, but they lost in the four-teamer in Lynchburg. And then Vincennes, they made their conference tournament, the Midwest Athletic Conference, that was played at the Corn Crib in Normal, Illinois, and they bowed out theirs with 2 losses. So they finished 25-32. So we've got the 8 Division I teams left, and 30 of them are done for this season as far as Indiana college baseball teams are concerned. I don't hear you. I don't hear you.
There we go. How about now?
Yeah, that's
You mentioned Missouri Valley Conference there. Just a couple quick notes on them that, to wrap up their, or Valpo specifically, a couple quick notes on them to wrap up their season. First of all, Jake Miller, I saw ended the season with the Missouri Valley Conference Pitcher of the Week. But a bigger one was Ryan Maka. I think I'm pronouncing that right. He had 4 home runs in a couple games versus Bradley this week and got Collegiate Baseball Newspaper's National Player of the Week. So that was a big deal. Just one other thing I was going to throw out there real quick. Justin Rasmussen, the Bethel grad, signed with the Utica Unicorns of the United Shore Professional Baseball League. I think you mentioned that, but I didn't know if you knew it was the United Shore Professional Baseball League. I'd never heard of that. Have you heard of that league? Is it just one?
Yes, yes, I have. It's they play all of their games in one park in Birmingham, Michigan, which is Utica, Michigan, which is in the suburbs of Detroit. And they, if you were really into baseball and lived in that area, you could see a game every day because there's something going on there between those 4 teams. So it's independent ball.
Yep, and I tell you, I love independent ball. There's, it's not going to be the same. We're going to have few and far between. The independent professional baseball leagues are dwindling as the Major League Baseball kind of gobbles them up every year more and more. But that's a show by itself. One thing you mentioned, you talked about all the tourneys coming up in college baseball. We're going to spend the rest of the show talking high school baseball. I figured I'd start the show by apologizing to 2 people. My wife and my boss, because it is tourney time and I am not going to get much done. I'm just telling you straight up. This is my favorite time of the year. We've got the College Baseball World Series coming up. Absolutely love it. And the high school sectional start this week. And as we wrapped up the high school season last week, well, I think we have a couple straggler games, maybe Monday and Tuesday. The teams that are sectional games are later in the week, I think still have a couple games. So if you saw the post we had about with the link to this show, then you saw that Steve and I are going to talk baseball team resumes today. And how are we going to do it? Well, we're going to start out by giving our picks. That's right. And Steve, I'll ask you a question here before we get started. How much does this really matter that we're giving picks? I mean, if you're a high school kid watching this right now, are you going to tell him just to mute and fast forward past all this until the picks are over? Because they really don't mean anything at the end of the day. Right. But what was the words you used? I mean, it's kind of fun for people like us, but at the end of the day,
Yeah, it gets people talking. Yep. I guess that's what the rankings are all about and everything. So somebody can talk about it. They do play it. They do have a tournament, so they do get to decide it between the white lines. But
yep.
This is, I am going to start out with my sheet of integrity. Somebody else asked me to pick my 4, and these are the 4 that I picked, and I'm going to stick with this.
Well, let's go with just your 1A. Matter of fact, let me reveal our 1A picks. And then I'm going to have you talk about yours, why you picked them, and maybe some other thoughts on some other teams that need to be on people's radar. So let's go to our 1A picks. These are Captain Craw and Hardy the Hat Guys projected 1A state champion. Here we go. Steve, why Cowan? Talk to me.
Well, it would be easy to pick the top of the heap. And I decided that it was so fun last year when Jasper and Huntingburg, although they were way up there in the rankings going in, there was hardly any upset. But we got 2 teams. That's a little bit of a tease about what I'm going to pick later. But Colin, why not? Cowan is not in the top 10, but they've been getting votes this year. They played a very good schedule, so that's why they are 12-9 as we speak. But I think something tells me they could catch fire. They're going to need to catch fire because we know this is a one and done tournament. But I think Aaron Wells and the Blackhawks have a really good shot. They are in the Anderson Preparatory Sectional, which is number 55. They will play Liberty Christian in the third game, and this is a 5-teamer. So they have a very good shot at getting out of there. They did get votes in the 1A poll this past week, the 7th one, by the Coaches Association, and Max Preps has them 13th in 1A. Chase Smith is one of their best hitters and pitchers, and Michael Hargrave and Jackson Clifford are among their top hitters, and also Landon Hyatt and Bradley Terrell are among the top pitchers with Cowan. Now, when you're looking at 1A, you look at the poll, and for the last few weeks, who's been at the top of that poll? It's been Borden. Now, Borden is Eric Stotts is the coach. The Braves, they're 19-5-1 as we talk. Now, they got some gaudy numbers. A.J. Agnew's hitting 456 with 29 RBIs. Gavin Gentry's hitting 435 with 27 knocked in. They're number 2 in 1A in the Max Preps, as well as being number 1 by the Coaches Association. Mentioned Gavin Gentry. He's 4-0. His ERA is below 1. AJ Agnew is 5-0. So they're a very good team. So if you're going to pick the very best team, according to what the coaches are saying, well, there you go, Borden. But I decided that I would. There's always seems to be an upset or some dark horse. That's why I picked Cowan. Bar Reeve. Yes.
Well, Cowan is no. I could listen to you talk all day because I mean you're and I like the way Cowan's playing too. They're fun to watch. As a matter of fact, I gave 2 apologies at the start of the show. I need to give a third because last year I think I've mentioned this a couple times on how many errors that I make. Well, one of the errors, Cowan is the infamous coach I keep talking about, where I'm talking to him on an interview, recording it, and talking to him for 5 minutes, realizing that I'm calling him the wrong name. So, and finally he was nice enough to talk about it, but or to let me know, and then we re-recorded, so he was pretty nice about it. But let me give my thoughts on Riverton Park and why I picked Riverton Park. Obviously, like you said, you can't go wrong by picking, some of the obvious ones like Borden. You mentioned Bar Reeve there. They are strong as well, and I've mentioned it a few times on this show that, there is a correlation to teams that have successful seasons in the same year in other sports, how that correlates over to success in baseball. Bar Reeve's a good example. They've had some good programs. I think it was basketball or football. They had a real good year.
Basketball for sure.
Basketball, yep. So, that translates over. So Bar Reeve would be an easy pick. Riverton Park, I'll start out by giving you a quote. I was talking to Coach Cully DeGroat this year of West Vigo. Of course, West Vigo is 20-1 or maybe 22-1. And we're definitely going to talk about them here in a little bit too. But Coach DeGroat, which by the way, he is the son of Hall of Fame coach Steve DeGroat, and the brother of Corey DeGroat, who is a great basketball player for ISU. Just a very athletic
Casey
family.
DeGroat.
Yeah, Casey and Coley, and there's another one there too. Sorry, DeGroat family, if you're listening to this, I can't remember the other one. But just a great family of coaches, great family of people. Anyway, I was asking him as we're just kind of chatting on over text, and I said, tell me about Riverton Park, because that was one of their last games of the year, and West Vigo is running the gamut in 3A, and they ended their season by winning 3-0 versus Riverton Park, and it was a no-hitter. But so he said, and this is his quote, he was talking about pitcher Derek LeBron is as good as any pitcher we've faced all year. And you're going to see in a second West Vigo's schedule. They have a strong schedule. And he said if Riverton Park can make the routine plays, they can play with any 1A team in the state. and that's Coach DeGroat talking about this one particular pitcher, Derek LeBron. But you add in him, and you add Hunter Collins and C.J. Odell, and I've talked about this pitching lineup, all throughout the year, and that's enough arms, ace level arms for a 1A team to make a run. Because as you know in the sectionals, you've got two good arms, and you're going to make a run. Riverton Park has three. They've had a good season. They split with Seeger, which Seeger just beat Lafayette Central Catholic. So in that kind of 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon way, you can do that kind of evaluation of them. So looking at some of the other teams, like I said earlier, obviously you got to throw Borden in the mix. You got to throw Lafayette Central Catholic in the mix, who probably had probably the toughest 1A schedule in the state. But I picked Riverton Park, over Lafayette Central Catholic. Number one, I'm relatively from that area. I like their coach, Charlie Martin. He was a fantastic baseball player years ago. Matter of fact, he played for the school that eventually moved into Riverton Park. His school, Charlie Martin I'm talking about, he played for Montezuma, which had a graduating class of like 20, and they merged Montezuma and Rosedale, and I think there was another into modern day Riverton Park, and they've had one of the best small school baseball programs for
I got to
years.
have this conversation about those teams with Dan's dad. I met him, what was it, 2 years ago, and we got to talk about the Rosedale Hot Shots and the Montezuma Aztecs and all these games and the sports back in the day. And not only would I love to have seen that, it's like some of the greatest nicknames in Indiana went away with that consolidation. Well, not that the Panthers aren't cool, but or the Wolves, but Park Heritage is part of Rockville, and they were the Rocks.
Yep.
How cool is that? And the Panthers is Riverton Park, and like I said, the Hot Shots and the Aztecs. And,
there before you even got to Montezuma and Rosedale, you had probably, you're talking about nicknames that have went away, and probably some of them for good reason. There was another school over there that you mentioned in talking to my dad. My dad graduating class had 5 in his graduating class, and he went to Mecca, and their mascot name was the Mecca Arabs. So you don't find too many mascot names like that anymore, and probably for good reason. But yeah. So that was a before we leave 1A, I gotta give a shout out to South Central as well. Union Mills, South Central. Very tough schedule, playing all those northern Indiana teams, northwest Indiana teams. They dropped in the ranks a little bit. At one point they were number 1 in the state, but I think you can't forget about them, because some of the losses that led to their dropping in the rankings were to really good teams. So I think South Central of Union Mills is another team there in that 1A bracket you got to watch out for. So let's move on, and let's take a look at our 2A brackets. And I said at the beginning of the year, the 2A and the 3A were really probably the most intriguing brackets to me, and I think that played out throughout the year as teams just jockeyed for position in those polls. So let's see what Captain Craw and I picked for our 2A champions. Steve, you picked Wapahani. Tell me why.
Well, I told you there was going to be love for Delaware County. and right there it is. But I saw Wapahani play this past week. I didn't know that they were going to win 10-0, and in 5 innings, and Gavin Lush was going to throw a perfect game for 5 innings. That's what happened. But this was against Monroe Central, and Monroe Central's a top 10 team, and they're a conference rival. So that got my attention. But Wapahani is, they won the state in 2014. Brian Dudley, their coach, is in his 39th year. He's won over 800 games. So they're, this is closer to a really good team. Wapahani has been number 1 at times this year. The rankings this past week had them 3 by the coaches and 13 in 2A by Max Preps. Now they have to come out of one of these rare 8-team sectionals.
Yeah.
Some of these teams only have four teams, some 5, but most of them are six teamers. They're at Frankton. There's 8 teams there. Wapahani plays Lapel. I saw Lapel, score a bunch of runs to beat Centerville a couple of weeks ago. So Lapel is legit. You got to get past them, and then they will probably play Monroe Central again. So they're going to earn their way. They're going to earn their way. Like I mentioned, Gavin Lush. Not only is he 6-2 with a 1.85 on the mound, he's hitting 471 with 33 runs driven in. Luke Wellman is one of their seniors they honored the other night. He was hitting 459 with 4 homers and 24 RBIs. Daxton Dudley is the coach, is Brian grandson, and he's their one of their top pitchers. Isaac Andrews swings a very good bat. He's over 400, and he's also 3-0 on the mound. They even have a kid named Nate Luce. He's a freshman, and he's 3-0, and his ERA is right around 2. So Wapahani, very good team. They play a pretty good schedule too. They beat Cowan twice, but they beat Pendleton Heights at the beginning of the season. They've beaten Greenfield Central.
Which is that's saying a lot. Greenfield Central has been competitive with every team they've played this year, and they've played some of the top tier 4A teams as well. So I mean that's saying a lot.
Absolutely, and you're looking at while you're talking about 2A, you can't help but talk about Carroll.
Yeah.
I didn't pick Carroll, but and why did I pick Carroll? Well, I wonder, but I just like Wapahani. Carroll is 22-0. They're in the Wabash sectional, and they will play Lewis Cass in the second game, and they're number 1 by the coaches and by Max Preps in 2A. Camden Parkhurst is the Cougars coach, and Carroll, you were mentioning Bar Reeve and some of these schools that have had success in one sport and then in another. Well, I happened to cover Carroll as they were playing in the basketball semi-state this past year. I know Silver Creek has found itself down at Victory Field after their basketball team did well. You can look at, or you can think of football teams making a run. So I think when athletes get used to winning, and especially at 1A, 2A, 3A schools where they have to share athletes, these are some of the same kids. So I think there's something to be said for that. And even before the tournament begins, Lafayette Central Catholic and Carroll are supposed to play tomorrow on Monday. So that might be a good somebody. If you're in that area, you might try to check that one out.
How much you think they're going to hold off, though? I mean, are they going to hold arms for that? Because at the end of the day, it's a game that it's a game like if you and I saw that game during the regular season, I'm leaving work to go watch that game. But being that sectionals are this week,
the sectionals are this week. They're both in the same class, so they could see each other down the road. That's entirely possible. Also in 2A, somebody we didn't mention, I saw them play and beat Oak Hill earlier in the season, the very beginning of the season, and that is Eastern of Greentown.
Yeah.
The Comets, Eric Heisner's got those boys 21-6. They're ranked 2 in 2A by the coaches and 10 in 2A by Max Preps. Listen to some of these numbers. Levi Garrett. What am I thinking? Levi Maverick. Levi Maverick is as much of a cowboy name as Levi Garrett is. 516 he's hitting. Corbin Snyder hitting 458, and he's 7-0 on the mound. His ERA is below 1. Porter Brabant is another senior, along with Maverick. He's hitting 413. Owen Taylor is hitting 392 with 26 RBIs, and he's 5-0 on the mound. So this is a very, very good team.
And those batting averages with a tough schedule. So I mean, that's
Yeah, they play North. They lost to Northwestern, but they Northwestern's legit. Rossville. Um, they played Carroll Flora, but Carroll Flora beat everybody. They beat Culver Academies. They've been a top 10 team. They split with Delphi. So they got a really good team. They're playing good 2A teams and even 3A teams
well,
on
some
their
good
schedule.
looking resumes there, and you're just getting at the what we said again. This 2A bracket is wide open. Let me tell you. Let me give you just one statement on the resume for University that did it for me. Of course, you got to mention schedule strength. I mean, their schedule strength is nuts. They're playing absolutely everybody. Chris Estep is their coach there. He runs Round Trippers Academy, but at one stretch during a 9 game stretch, and these aren't these are good teams. They outscored their opponents in that 9 game stretch during the right in the middle of the season, 90-3. 90-3. They put a stretch
So
together.
10 runs a game, and
Yeah,
and just shut down pitching.
and it was absolutely shut down pitching because I think, like you said, they all those shutouts. I think one that was 3 different teams that scored 1 run against them, but I mean they were all run ruled, and there were I think 2 no hitters during that stretch. A handful of 1 hitters. So I mean they can pitch with anybody, and the fact that they put that many games together, they've got arms to spare. So they ended the last week with a loss to Cathedral, but that's one of those games. I think that game got rescheduled 4 times, and it was during that one of the last weeks. Well, actually, they weren't even scheduled to play Cathedral. Cathedral was a fill-in game that then it also got rained out a couple times, so they finally ended up playing them. But it was after that stretch where they had 5 games in the week. So
That
I'm
shows you the level they're at when
right.
when they're looking for a game. They go find somebody like a Cathedral
They
team
find
who
Cathedral,
plays
who
full.
and Cathedral is one of the team, probably more than any team in the state, that I like to call a measuring stick team, because so many people play Cathedral. A Cathedral schedule goes from Lake Michigan to the Ohio River, and it's all prominent teams. So, Cathedral, if you want to look at who you want to see, look at Cathedral's schedule and see who they've played, and that gives you a good measuring stick because they've played so many teams across the state. As you mentioned, you got to look at Wapahani. I made a note about them as well. And obviously, an easy pick is Carroll of Flora at 22-0. I got 2 kind of teams that to watch. One of them is Cascade. Cascade is one of those teams I like to call it in the 3rd tier of suburbs. You get the 1st tier of suburbs if you're not from Indiana. That 1st tier of suburbs around Indianapolis includes teams like Westfield, Zionsville, Fishers, Brownsburg, Avon, Plainfield, Greenwood, Center Grove, all the way around. Then you got Lawrence on the east side and everything like that. Then you got a 2nd tier, which is teams like Danville and Tri-West, and actually Carmel would be a tier 2. And then you got that tier 3 right there. It's like the 3rd level of subdivisions outside of Indianapolis. And the reason I watch that, it sounds kind of silly, but the reason I watch that is that 3rd tier of teams, they're usually 1, 2A teams, maybe a couple 3As, but they're always playing in to those 2nd tier and 1st tier teams, so their schedule of strength is always good. And if you've got a 20-win team, and this is my weird math, in that 3rd level of suburbs around any major city, they're always going to have, it's very rare that you'll see them undefeated because they're always playing up to those 2, 3, and 4A teams, and you get a 20-win season. That tells you, with the schedule that they have, what kind of team they are. But my dark horse, the one I really want to mention, is Seeger. Now, I'm kind of hometowning you too because, I've got Riverton Park, which is Wabash River Conference team, as my 1A pick. Then my kind of dark horse for 2A is Seeger. And, they're not in the top 10. Matter of fact, I'm looking, they only got a couple votes in the IHSBCA, but they split with Riverton Park, and one time I believe they run ruled them on one of them. They ended up second in the WRC. They ended up with a kind of um, a loss you can't explain there at the end of the year to Covington, but they also had huge wins against North Montgomery, Lafayette Central Catholic, and then a really big win over Twin Lakes to wrap up, almost wrap up their season. So Seeger is a team, they've always been able to hit. They've got a kid that's playing for IU right now, pitcher. I can't, it's one of those names. It's like a Scrabble word. It's got maybe one vowel and 10 consonants. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He's pitching for Seeger, but and they're continuing that. Seeger is a team on the rise, and I think they're going to they very potentially could make a statement this year.
John Turner's coaching there now, and he was at Richmond, and before that he was at North Vigo. So
Yep.
people know that name.
So, and Seeger's also, I've given that suburb analogy. Seeger is, kind of in the middle between Lafayette and Terre Haute. So they're playing north to some of the higher class 4A teams, and they're playing south to some of the higher class 4A teams in Terre Haute. So they've got that schedule strength element as well. So there's our 2A look. We're going to keep moving here. We've got 2 more classes to go. Let's talk 3A. And Steve, you've got Western, and I've got the Vikings of West Vigo. I told you were going to talk about them again. Tell me about Western. Obviously, that's I don't want to say it's a safe pick, but they had quite a year, to say the least. Tell us why you got them taking the title at the Vic this year.
Well, they've only lost 2 games. I did see them play earlier this year. They played at Northwestern and they won. Big rivalry, of course, in the sectional will be at Northwestern. Peru plays Western in the first game, and Northwestern and Benton Central in game 2. And this is a 7-teamer. West Lafayette, Twin Lakes, and then Waconaquah got the bye. Western is just a solid team that I saw top to bottom. Ryan Berryman's been there a long time. And had a lot of success. The only losses that they've had were in the last couple of about the last 3 weeks or so. They started the season with a long win streak. They lost to Noblesville. There's no shame in that. Good Noblesville is year in and year out, and they lost to Lafayette Central Catholic. So we just talked about them. So. I think they're legit. They beat Wabash a couple of times.
Which is saying a lot.
Yeah, it was saying a lot. I just saw Wabash play last week. Wabash is a good team. They beat Rossville. They beat University. So they got some really good wins on their resume. So that's why I like the Panthers.
Well, I'll add to that. I'll add to that before you talk about any of your other ones. Is that we all said, all 4 of us, me, you, Chris, and Mark, all 4 said at the beginning of the year, Western I don't believe was in the top 10. I think they got votes. If they were in the top 10, they might have been number 10. And that was one of those buy low, sell high things, because we said at the beginning of the year that Western is going to rise, and they absolutely have. I don't think they ever reached number 1, but I think they rose or stayed the same every week, and that's something to consider because, other than maybe Andrean, which is also in that bracket, I don't know of any team in any division that hasn't gone up and back down. Western has rose every single week. So, that's definitely something to consider. I can't say enough good things about them. So who are some of the others that may be on your radar?
Well, you just mentioned Andrean. I mean, Andrean is probably a safe pick considering that they're number 1 in 3A by the coaches, and they're the number 1 overall, regardless of class in Indiana by Max Preps. They have lost, but they lost to Munster.
Munster, right.
Munster is legit. They lost to Hanover Central. I saw them win. And then their other 2 losses came this past weekend, and that's to Homewood Flossmoor and Brother Rice over there in the Chicago area. So they play a schedule like that because of where they're located. And, they played Marian Catholic twice. They played Lincoln Way Central. They were supposed to play Marist. There's a big invitational tournament. I think that's a part of it they play in every year. Marist is in the Chicago area, and they began their season down in
Tennessee,
down
wasn't
south. They beat a team from the Nashville area, Grace Christian Academy. They beat Jeffersonville's good, Ballard, Louisville Ballard. So they, yeah, they're a legit team. Boone Grove is good. That's one of their wins. Ileana Christian, another win. Mishawaka Marion.
well, and I'll
So
tell you,
yeah,
a
they're
win
good.
they have.
And Dave Pishker's won over 1,000 games.
Yeah.
So
There's that. Well,
here's the intriguing, another intriguing thing is that they're at the Griffith sectional because of them coming back from the success factor and coming back from 4A to 3A. Griffith had won 9 sectionals in a row.
yeah,
That's the longest current title streak for sectionals active right now. Andre and Griffith game 1, Calumet, Gary West game 2. It's only a 4-teamer then, so the winners will play in the championship game.
well, don't count Griffith out yet. They beat Lake Central a week and a half ago.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying this is
right.
It's
that sectional definitely got a lot tougher.
Griffith and Andrean wouldn't have picked each other right out of the. But that was a blind draw, so that's what happened.
Yep. So that's a going with I picked West Vigo here. Obviously, you mentioned Andrean and Western. They're on everybody's radar. They would be on the discussion in 4A. I mean, they're both that good. Why did I pick West Vigo? Well, of course, I've got 2 homer jobs here with West Vigo and Riverton Park. I'm a West Central Indiana guy, and I even mentioned Seeger, so that's 3 West Central Indiana teams that I've mentioned. Yeah, it's kind of a homer job, but you know what? We're doing this for fun anyway. But this West Vigo does have a legit chance. This isn't just a sympathy vote by a guy near there. They run ruled. Let me just talk about some of the teams they run ruled. They run ruled 4A Terre Haute North once, 4A Terre Haute South twice, 4A Warren Central, Greencastle, which I mentioned. Greencastle's a 3A team, but I mentioned a few times throughout the year how good I thought Greencastle was. They went through a stretch there where I thought they could have been in the top 5 in the state, or at least the top 10. And they run ruled them. Then, of course, they run ruled Northview. Northview's not the team that Northview was, a few years ago, but they're still a good team that hovers in that 4 and 3A class right there. And for them to run rule them, because Terre Haute North, Terre Haute South, and Greencastle, well, maybe not so much Greencastle, but Terre Haute North, Terre Haute South, and Northview, these are rivalry games. These are big-time rivalry games for West Vigo, and they run-ruled every single one of them. They are legit. Plus, they no-hit Riverton Park 3-0 to end their season. Now, Riverton Park's a 1A team, but they're also the team that I have picked to win it. So, I mean, West Vigo is a legit team for sure.
They've won 20 games in a row, haven't they?
Yep, 20 games in a row. I think they're only.
I bet it would be really gaudy if you took the run differential in those 20 games. Too.
Well,
talking about all those run rule games.
Yeah, and they beat Clay City 15-1. Clay City was in the top 10 at one point during the year. A tight win against Sullivan, but Sullivan is right there, one of their biggest rivalries in the WIC, the Western Indiana Conference. Of course, they beat Brown County 27-0, White River Valley 14-0. They almost run-ruled Edgewood, who's in the state finals just a couple years ago. 6-4 over 4A Bloomington South. Wins over North Putnam. I'm trying to look. Their only loss was to Lebanon, which we know how good Lebanon is. Lebanon is a 4A team, and they're getting votes every year. I don't think they're in the top 10 this year.
I think that 3-0 game was good for them. They need to be in a few tight games because they could go through the state tournament and beat everybody 10-0, but once they get in a close game, they got to know what that's all about too.
Well, they started the year by playing Peru, and to quote Coach Brimberry at Peru, he said, the reason we wanted to start our schedule is we want to play up. And, looking at our schedule, we know what West Vigo is doing with their program. So West Vigo is where we want to start our season because we want to play what we think is probably one of the top, if not the top teams in the state. That was a quote from Chuck Brimberry earlier in the year. So a lot of respect for West Vigo. And the rest of the 3A teams in that bracket, obviously we mentioned Andrean, Western. You can't throw out Brebeuf. You've got one of the top pitchers in the state, if not one of the top pitchers in the country, right there with Brebeuf and Andrew DeCanich. We're going to mention him a little bit. And Silver Creek is another one. Silver Creek just pounded University in one of the last games of the year, and I say pounded. They didn't run rule them. I don't think what the final score was, but they beat them hands down. And Silver Creek is just they're a stellar team. Matter of fact, speaking of that, let's go to the 4A and let's look at our picks for the 4A bracket. We're at the big boys. And you've got Homestead, and yeah, I took an easy one. Maybe I took the easy way out here in Center Grove, but I'll tell you why here in a minute. But Homestead is not a fan vote either, because they've got a legit chance. Tell us a little bit about Homestead and some of the other teams that you're looking at in 4A.
Well, I got to see Homestead play Carroll at Parkview Field a couple of weeks ago, and they impressed me. And I've seen Carroll like 3 times this year. They beat Carroll. Carroll has a very good chance. I'll tell you a little bit more about them in a minute. But Homestead, Nick Bile is the coach of the Spartans. They're 19-6 as we speak. They're at the Huntington North sectional, and they will play Huntington North in the second game. They're getting votes in the coaches poll in 4A this week, and they're number 13 overall by Max Preps. They are a very senior-laden team. You look at their top hitters, and it's Brendan Weiger, Jackson Toder, Carton Dixon, Nicholas Hockemeyer, Braden Quintana. They're all hitting between 421 and 355. All of those guys are seniors. Their top pitcher, you could say, might be Caden Tarango's 3-1, but Griffin Tinkle's 5-0. Alex Graber's just a sophomore. He's 6-1. So they're very deep. Pitching, they played Carroll 3 times and they beat them 2 out of the 3. So
that was maybe, in my opinion, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that Carroll and Homestead series was, I think, maybe the best 3-game series of the whole year. I mean, that was just, it lived up to the expectation, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. They lost to Fishers, but we know how good Fishers is this year. So they played very good teams. They split with Cathedral a couple of games with Cathedral. They lost to Gibson Southern, but that was the second game of the year. Gibson Southern's been good all year. Norwell is also a win on their resume, as is DeKalb. Fort Wayne Blackhawk is a smaller school, but they're very good. They beat them as well. Leo give you a test, and they split with Leo. So that says a lot of good things about Homestead. Since we were talking about Carroll, let me tell you a little bit more about the Chargers. They are at the East. They're at the DeKalb sectional. They're 24-4. Dave Ginder is the coach.
Great coach, great guy.
Been a long time, absolutely. They're ranked 6th in the latest coaches poll. Number 3 in 4A by Max Preps. Alex Smith is hitting 391, driven in 32 and he's got 4 home runs. Jaden Duba and Jordan Malat are top hitters as seniors. Andrew Sinish is a really good hitter. And then you look at their pitching staff, and you got Cameron Saunders as a junior, and Will Worrell. They're both 5-1. Mm-hmm. Michael Dierkman is 4-0. Jordan Malat's 3-1. So they're a deep team on the mound.
Well, I think that Jordan Malat, he had a couple weeks this year where he was mentioned in our Player of the Week, or our top performers nominations, if I'm right. But yeah, they're loaded top to bottom. For time, let me move into my 4A talk, and then we're gonna mention all the conference champions through the year, and then we're gonna end with our top performers, and we're gonna crown our BAI Player of the Week, and we have something kind of interesting and new that we're going to introduce. So make sure you hang around. But we're talking 4A here real quick. Obviously, It could be said I took the easy route out by going Center Grove, but hold on, because they do not have an easy road. First of all, like Steve said, this 4A bracket is just loaded, top to bottom. And one thing I like about it is if you break the teams in the top 10 geographically, we have the whole state represented here. You've got the Northwest Indiana, you've got LaPorte and Lake Central. You go all the way down to the southwest of Indiana, you've got Jasper, you've got Castle, you've got Evansville North. You go up in the Fort Wayne area of Colorado, you've got Carroll. In the central part of the state, obviously, you've got Fishers and Center Grove. Mooresville's kind of getting south there too. So the whole state is represented, and I love to see that because every part of the state, nobody's got an easy route. So this Center Grove, just as an example, they head south, and they can be beat by any number of teams to come out of that south bracket. You're talking Evansville North, Castle, Jasper, and that semi-state's going to be down there at Ruxer, and that place is going to be rocking again. So that Center Grove's got the farthest drive, really. When looking at these teams we're mentioning anyway, to that semi-state. They may end up in a shallow south semi-state. Depends. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's the South and Center Grove, and I've seen Center Grove play a few times this year, and their weight training program for the baseball team is on par with the weight training program for their football team, and we all know what that is. And it is, these guys are built. They've got 8 D1 guys on their team, D1 commits, and that's not even counting some of the underclassmen right there. So Center Grove, I think, is an easy pick because they're ranked number 1 in the state. They're 22-2 and 1. Their first loss was to one of the Columbus teams at the beginning of the year. But that brings up the last point I want to mention about Center Grove is they are beatable. If all you're doing is throwing fastballs, and I'm not giving a scouting report here, I'm Hardy the Hat guy. What do I know? But if you're just giving them fastballs 80, 90, 95 plus at whatever, they're gonna pound you. But the pitchers that can mix it up, and this is not any new news, a pitcher that can mix it up will keep Center Grove in check at least. But they can hit the ball from 1 through 9. Their defense, though, is equally as it's right on par with how good their offense is as well. But now, if you look north, and that brings me to what I think is the most intriguing team in that 4A bracket. Now, ironically, could be an easy way to say it's an intriguing pick because they are the largest school in the state. Obviously, I'm talking about Carmel. But when you look at Carmel, the reason they're intriguing is, they start out the year and, they fell out of the polls kind of quick. They did get some votes, I think. I was just double checking here. Yeah, they did get some votes to end the season, but they have a 1-0 loss to Zionsville. Zionsville was ranked number 1 in the state at the time. They lost 8-6 to Mooresville, which we know how good Mooresville is. They've only got 2 losses on the season. Then they got absolutely pounded by Westfield, 19-1. So, but that was in a week where they had 3 games. They beat Noblesville 10-2, and Noblesville, per the Westfield coach, Noblesville could, they played a scrimmage game with them, and Noblesville won. So, Noblesville, you mentioned them earlier, they're kind of off everybody's radar now, but that's just because they're in the Hoosier Crossroads Conference, and how tough that conference is. So the Carmel got pounded by Westfield 19-1. But then they come back and they beat Lawrence North. They ruled Whiteland. They beat Avon soundly. Lawrence Central. Garin Catholic is lower, but then they beat Ben Davis soundly on both of them. They only lost to Fishers by 2 runs.